It's the early 2000s. You just got home from school, you're catching up on your favorite animes, and then you fire up your GameCube and dive into games based on those shows, replicating those awesome action moments from the animes themselves. The GameCube had no shortage of licensed games, and considering the popularity of numerous anime franchises, the console saw quite a nice amount of games based on those various properties. In this episode, I'm going to cover 10 GameCube games based on anime franchises. And don't worry, if you don't see a favorite one of yours mentioned here, it most certainly will be in a follow-up episode because there's quite a bit to cover in just one episode. Anyway, sit back, relax, and let's Kamehameha this episode. Kicking things off is Dragon Ball Z Budokai, published by Atari and developed by Dimps. Being the first Dragon Ball Z game to release for the 6th generation of consoles, Budokai brought fans a one-on-one fighter that looked to capture the feel and essence of Dragon Ball Z, and honestly, it does a dang good job right out of the gate. Players will dive into the story mode and play pivotal fights from the start of the series, and everything is done almost shot for shot to the anime itself. Heck, even the cartoon's intro made it here with the in-game graphics and is really on point, especially early into the 6th gen hardware. The fighting itself is quite responsive, fast-paced, and engaging, and it does feel like what a Dragon Ball Z fighting game should have been for its time. During fights, you can mix up punches, kicks, and key energy attacks while using capsule moves. Capsules allow you to pull off special combos if inputted correctly, and the more you unlock, the more you can actually customize your character to have with a capsule loadout in a sense. It's a very unique idea for a fighting game, and it makes for an engaging mechanic. Additionally, you'll be able to knock your opponent into the air to continue fighting, and more exciting is when you both initiate a special move that clashes and results in both players rapidly button pressing to win these mini-game battles. Honestly, I know Budokai 1 got some poor reception back in the day, but I was very surprised at how well this actually held up. And if you enjoyed Budokai 1, next up is Budokai 2, published by Atari and developed by Dimps. Budokai 2 improves upon its predecessor by refining the fighting mechanics, making it feel a bit more fluid and even faster than before. Instead of tackling the story mode in a linear fashion, players are introduced to a board game-like structure in which you take turns against the computer to make your way around and complete your objective for the stage. You can land on spaces that provide power-ups for the stage duration like increased attack, defense, and extra lives, as well as various others. You'll even pick partners to join in on the battles and speed up the process of completing the board. It's definitely something that is very unique, and while it was a very divisive structure, I actually didn't mind this approach. As mentioned, the fighting is definitely smoother, and seeing some additions mechanically as well, like these special moves that allow for both players to press an attack button and see if an attack follows through or if your opponent can block it. The visuals also seem richer in detail and continues to nail the look of the anime itself. Other than that, if you liked Budokai 1, then you'll have even more to like here. Although, it's a real shame that Budokai 3 never released on the GameCube afterwards, as that one was easily my favorite of the trilogy. Now next up we have Dragon Ball Z Sagas, published by Atari and developed by Avalanche Software. Changing up the formula from the Budokai series, Sagas was actually developed here in the West and never actually released in Japan, and it may be for good reason. This installment focused on being a 3D beat-em-up covering the events from the Saiyan Saga to the Cell Saga, and is also fully playable in 2-player co-op, and that idea honestly excited me to dive into this one. However, shortly upon starting up the game, I noticed things weren't quite good. Controls felt stiff and the camera was really bad at times, reminding me of something like Dino Crisis 3's abysmal camera. You have zero control of that too. The combat was very stilted and it just felt unpolished, not to mention that it's infuriating when enemies are constantly blocking your attacks. You'll mix up attacks with the punch, kick, and key attack buttons and can unlock new moves using Z coins that you collect within levels. Based on the level, you will play as whichever characters pertain to the episode that you're playing. The game does a great job of presenting the story itself in between levels, as well as prior to boss fights, and it also has a really good soundtrack to go with it. The visuals do a good job of capturing the look of the show, but the performance and the odd, wonky animations do detract from the experience quite a bit. Out of all the Dragon Ball Z games on the GameCube, this is easily the weakest of the bunch, and that's a real shame, because a beat-em-up Dragon Ball Z should have been so badass. Next up is Medabots Infinity, published by Natsume and developed by Imagineer. While this game initially started as a game series on the Game Boy, it very shortly received an anime adaptation and was a Saturday morning cartoon on Fox Kids. Medabots, also known as Medarots in Japan, is about collecting robots and parts to customize into various Medabots. You play as a boy named Iki, who is trying to find his friends that currently went missing, and with the help of his Medabot, must take on the Rubber Robo gang that's responsible. The game is broken up into running around an overworld, then going stage to stage to reach the end location. During stages, you will explore for items to acquire, take on enemies, and use the environment to solve puzzles to advance to the exit.
If you step on a floor switch, that's not all. Traps will activate too. If you step on a floor switch, nearby devices will activate. That's not all. Traps will activate. If you step on a floor switch, nearby devices will act. That's not. Traps will act.
By the way, that's just the first screen of the first level. Sometimes you'll need to do a one-on-one battle with other Medabots that are stronger than the average enemy as well. However, Medabots Infinity is a game that is incredibly dull and boring to play. You equip different types of weapons depending on your arms and head, and you choose that weapon using the C-stick. Firing your weapon requires you to stop in your tracks and wait for the animation to play out, but takes far too long in between. Controls in general are clunky, and honestly, it's an absolute snooze fest to sit through this one. There is a versus mode, but I can't imagine anyone actually enjoying this enough to bring someone else into the mix. The only thing I found humorous was the ridiculous running animation of Iki here, who looks like he's running around looking for the bathroom. Additionally, the camera doesn't fare much better either, as you can't control that, and it kind of moves based on whatever direction you're going, but never quite feels natural, and you're kind of fighting with the camera at times. This one was quite painful to sit through for this episode. It's really that sluggish to play.
With shoot meta parts, it bursts, and no matter how good your aim, the balloon bomb kind of floats. If the wind blows, watch your time. You can drop a bomb exactly.
Next up is Rave Master, published by Konami and developed by Konami Japan. Based on the popular manga then turned anime, Rave Master is an arena fighter akin to something like Power Stone. Choosing the character of your choice, you'll face off in square arenas using either their character-specific weapon or other weapons you can pick up off the ground. You have your traditional light attack and strong attack buttons, with light attacks allowing for combos and strong attacks dishing more damage while clearing distance from your opponent. You can even do basic jump attacks, and there are special attacks you can do called groove attacks, which uses your special meter you build up. There will be colored orbs that appear during battles that can be picked up for perks, and these either can help by adding fire to your attacks or turning you into a metal character to receive less damage, as well as various others. If you have the right combination of perks and your character's special weapon, you can pull off an ultimate groove attack, which dishes out a ton of damage. The story mode is limited to only 5 characters, but there's the free mode, which is like an arcade mode essentially, and allows for you to play with more characters there. As you play, there will be a good amount of content to unlock, and completing everything should keep you busy for quite some time. I will say, The game is a very basic arena fighter, and I wish the arenas had more to them than just being flat square arenas. But if you're a fan of the series, what's here is perfectly serviceable and a decent time.
Respect for you.
Next up is Digimon World 4, published by Bandai and developed by BEC or Bandai Entertainment Company. Digimon is a franchise I always felt was trying to compete with the popularity of Pokemon, but it had its own unique flair and was a big success over the years. After numerous installments on the PlayStation 1, the World series was brought over to a Nintendo platform. This isometric action RPG has you choosing or creating a Digimon of your choice and taking part in numerous missions across the Digiverse. As you tackle missions, you will earn XP, collect gear, and bits for currency to later use to purchase essential items throughout your journey. In many ways, this game reminds me of Gauntlet Legends or Dark Legacy, as the premise feels somewhat similar, and that's not a bad thing at all. Much like that series, this game allows up to 4 players to co-op throughout the entire game as well. Combat is relegated to simple slashes, but you can also do a 360-degree attack, block, push opponents away, and utilize MP. Let me tell you though, this game is no joke difficulty-wise, at least not in the beginning. I felt like enemies can gang up on you easily if not careful, and in some ways, it felt really cheap like this instance here. Also, should you die in this game, and you will need to go back and retrieve your chip if you want to keep the bits you've earned so far, and should you die again and fail to retrieve that, well, then it's gone forever. Sound like another popular series of games as of late? Luckily, you could still keep leveling up your character without losing your XP if you die, so that's good thankfully. Despite some janky combat and collision detection, there is a charm to this game that had me wanting to keep attempting more at it. If you're a fan of Digimon or Gauntlet style co-op games, this might really be worth a try. And if you wanted more Digimon gaming or something a little bit different, then there's Digimon Rumble Arena 2, published by Bandai and developed by Black Ship Games. If Super Smash Bros. Melee wasn't enough for you, or always wanted Digimon to have their own Smash Bros. Style game, well, Rumble Arena 2 has you covered. In this 4-player brawler fighting game, you will choose from a variety of Digimon creatures and duke it out across several stages. You choose the path of your story mode that reminds me a bit of something like Sagas Outrun games and partake in battles. You will use a variety of standard and heavy attacks as well as throwing moves. Unlike Smash Bros though, it's not about knocking your opponent solely off the stage, as you actually have a health bar here. As you pummel your opponent, you will collect blue orbs that build up your Digivolve meter down below, and once full, you can Digivolve, making your Digimon much stronger and having a different moveset. The game throws in different modes of play as well, like this one here where you have to collect as many golden eggs as possible, and this keep away mode where you need to hold onto an egg as long as possible. They say imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and Rumble Arena 2 does exactly that while implementing Digimon's identity and core aspects. The stages are fairly fun to take part in, although I will say the backdrop visuals and texture work can be a little on the low end side, but the game does maintain 60 frames locked. This is a pricey one to find on the GameCube now, but if you love Smash Bros. Or Digimon, this is a dang fun one to check out. Next up is Robotech Battlecry, published by TDK Media Active and developed by Vicious Cycle. Based on the popular 80s anime, Robotech Battlecry has you playing as an original character, Jack Archer, as he works alongside the familiar cast of characters from the series and facing off against the Centrati forces. In this flight-based combat game, you will battle your way through an original story across 5 chapters, each with numerous missions to tackle. Utilizing the SDF-1, you will be able to transform into 3 modes: Fighter, Battleoid, and Guardian. Each type is designed for a variety of combat situations, where the Fighter is excellent for dogfighting, Battleoid is great for moving through city-like locales, and Guardian allows for versatile movement and even sniping capabilities. The game will challenge you though, as some of the missions are incredibly difficult, but it's so much fun mechanically that it'll have you sticking with it through and through. The story really feels like a great extension to the show, and also looks and sounds the part with its excellent cel-shaded aesthetics and returning voice actors reprising their roles, giving this an authentic feel from start to finish. There's even a head-to-head multiplayer mode that, while simple, is honestly just a lot of fun. This is one that I played in my childhood, as my brother got me into this series back then, and remembered putting a ton of time into this. Robotech Battlecry is honestly one of the best licensed games available on the GameCube, and one that never really gets enough love and is honest to god a hidden gem for the console.
Enemy battle pods approaching.
Next up is Zoids Battle Legends, published by Atari and developed by Tomy. This was actually a trilogy for the GameCube over in Japan known as Zoid Versus, but we only received one here in the US, and this one happens to be Zoids Versus 2. Based on the anime series, you will pilot a group of machines called Zoids in a battle against both the Republic and Empire. You can choose which story campaign to tackle, as well as tackle other game modes. Zoids Battle Legends feels like an inspired version of Sega's Virtual On series, but with much larger arenas and more customization. You will customize the Zoid of your choice, as well as the loadout weapons and even change the color appearance. Once in battle, you'll be hunting down opponents and trying to take them down. The campaign itself provides missions where you may either take down the opposing Zoids or escort a unit to safety while other enemies come after you. Additionally, there's other game modes where you can either just jump into the action for quicker pick up and play sessions, and of course, some multiplayer action. However, there is one big issue with Zoids if you couldn't tell from the footage yet, and that's the game's performance. The game runs at a very inconsistent and oftentimes sluggish frame rate. There are times I felt like the game ran like a poorly optimized N64 game, although another issue are that the controls don't quite feel that great. It's a shame, because the core gameplay itself is quite fun for what it is, but the performance really bogs down the experience. To wrap things up is Ultimate Muscle Legends vs. New Generation, published by Bandai and developed by Aki Corporation. Based on the popular anime/Saturday morning cartoon on Foxbox, Ultimate Muscle has you wrestling your way through several characters' story modes, while unlocking more characters in the process. Now, Ultimate Muscle is not your traditional wrestling game. While yes, it is based on an over-the-top anime, it's actually a wrestling game where it's not about weakening the stamina of your opponent to pin them down, but rather the characters have actual health bars that'll KO them. It's essentially a fighting game and wrestling game hybrid. The game's mechanics easily have that Aki Corp flair, with the controls and weight of character movement feeling like their signature style. As you keep dishing out damage on your opponents, you'll build up your special meter, in which you can pull off level 2 grapples, and if maxed out, can pull off ultimate attacks, which are spectacles to watch. When in 2v2 matches, you can even pull off tag team ultimate attacks. Additionally, you'll be able to create your own wrestling character, give them a persona, and have them join into the fray, which is really cool. You can also unlock toys to view from the property's lineage, and this is some pretty neat fan service that'll keep players busy to unlock them all. The visual presentation also nails the look and feel of the anime with great cel-shaded visuals and a really good soundtrack that matches the gameplay. Honestly, Ultimate Muscle is just plain fun, and even as someone who actually never watched the anime much, this game easily caught my attention and had me hooked. Now, this is definitely on the pricey side, but if you can get your hands on it in some way or another, I highly recommend playing this with friends, or even in solo.
How this one's gonna turn out? Looks like you're locked up. What will happen next? I can't quite read the next one. see some action! He got him! Guys, I'm not getting out of this one! He's going for it, full out!
Now, as stated at the beginning of the episode, these aren't every anime-based game, but rather a handful to cover for this episode. There will definitely be a follow-up at some point covering the remaining ones for sure. As you can see though, some of them were really good, if even great, while others, well, kind of left a lot to be desired. So, have you played any of these games? Any here that interested you? Sound off in the comments below, as I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe as well to check out a ton of other GameCube related content, both previous episodes as well as upcoming ones. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next episode, GCG Nation.